everyone. Um, I'm Vanessa. So today I'll be talking about how my team works with people in the business to unify the processes and tech to create some vision to a unified vision. Sorry, still early in the morning. Um, so let me just introduce myself before I start. So I'm Vanessa, I'm a design leader, a speaker, and at the heart of what I do is essentially I love to solve problems. So I love understanding why users do what they do and why they do it. And I'm currently the head of UX at Cazoo. So for those of you who don't know who Cazoo is, we're the UK's first fully online retailer. We've sold over 100,000 vehicles. We are a tech unicorn, and from a UX point of view, we've got around 18 UX folk, and that's across user research, service design, content design, and product design. So as it is early in the morning and I'm still waking up, thought I'd do a pop quiz. There's only two questions, right? So what is the most searched make in 2002 on the Cazoo website? So A, Aldi, B, Ford, or C, BMW? Hands up for people who think it's Aldi. All right, okay. Hands up for people who think it's Ford. All right. And hands up for people who think it's BMW. All right, it actually is in fact C, BMW. Next question. What is the most bought car of 2022 on Cazoo? So A, Ford Fiesta, B, Volkswagen Golf, or C, Vauxhall Corsa. Hands up for Ford Fiesta. Right, yeah. Hands up for B, VW Golf. And C, Vauxhall Corsa. All right, obviously not that many Corsa fans. And it's A, Ford Fiesta. So it tells you that our users have big kind of dreams, but small budgets. So what I want to do is take you back, right? So into the world of operations and logistics. So the unique thing about Cazoo is we do end-to-end, so we own our vehicles. So we're not like Auto Trader, who's more of a marketplace. We actually own all the vehicles. And operations and logistics is the backbone of Cazoo. So there's three main parts to it. So we've got logistics, which we move the vehicles around our network. We've got yard management, which essentially manages the tasks that happen on the sites. And fulfillment, which is the thing that most customers know, which is the Cazoo truck coming to your home and delivering the vehicle. And with this space, there's actually quite a few key challenges. So we're a 24-hour operation, and we have a mix of users. So we have users that are desk-based, but we also have users that are in the field. So that means that we have to deal with things like the physical environment. So daytime, nighttime, wind, rain, snow. We've still got people out there working. In COVID, we actually had a lot of people still working as well. So while we were actually at home, working from home, people were working in the field. And then we've got things like process and governance. So it's really important that our users follow the processes and the governance that we set out, because that could lead to maybe like audit issues, for example, or issues with our inventory. So it's really important that we actually follow this. And then we've also got variable workflows. So we've got users that do multiple tasks, and they can vary depending on the site. And then lastly, on top of that, we've got multiple sites as well. And up until about a year ago, a lot of this used to be powered by spreadsheets and Slack. So that was the tech. But in essence, there's three key elements that need to work together. So we've got the people element of it, so the people that are running the sites and moving the cars around. We've got the processes that they need to follow, and we've got the tech that our users are using to input that information. And all of this needs to work together to deliver the customer promise, which is, at the end of the day, bringing a high-quality car to the customer. And what I do like to say is people are at the heart of this. So what's quite interesting is the people are the ones that are following the processes, inputting in the data, and tech is almost just like a supporting function. But the problem with people being in the heart of it is it's actually really difficult to predict human behavior. technology can help us ensure that our processes are actually being followed. And what we historically did is tech solved this by creating apps. So across the operations domain, we've got like 9 cross-functional teams. The 9 cross-functional teams decided to create apps. And we created a lot of apps, multiple apps. But what we didn't do was have a single app for a single purpose. We had workflows that went across apps. And what happened is people created workarounds. This example on the side is basically an example of a planner and the tooling that they have to use daily. So some of them are, so the top 3 are apps that we created internally. And then the others are basically spreadsheets that they've created to fill that gap, basically, of what the tech didn't do. So rather than trying to solve the problem, actually, we made it worse. So a little bit of a break. So what I want you to do is try and remember these 3 objects. It's going to be pretty simple. Everyone remembers that. Now I'm going to try and get you to remember all of these 3 objects, or 3, more than 3 objects. And this is a lot more difficult, isn't it? It's like, I can't do it. And this is because of Miller's Law, which I hope most people are familiar with. But essentially it says that people can only really remember or hold in their working memory around seven things. And what we did at Cazoo in operations is we traded off fast delivery because we wanted to really, really deliver fast. But what we did is we passed on the complexity onto our users, which led to confused cat users, basically. And essentially, we had all these teams not working together, trying to solve their problems within the teams, but actually creating more problems across for those. Our users basically don't sit in a team. Our users are across teams. They don't see the structure that we have within operations. So what we felt, so the head of product, myself, and the head of engineering really felt that we needed a vision within operations. We needed something that all the teams can start moving towards, and that enters the target product experience. So the target product experience is a shared vision of the user experience within operations. What we wanted to do is we didn't really want to, like a lot of the times in other companies that I've been in, with designers have gone in the corner, done the North Star, come back, present it to the exec, and we're like, ta-da, this is the future. And what happens is it just ends up in the corner or in a drive somewhere, and it doesn't actually move anywhere. So my kind of goal for this was to be really collaborative, to work with product, to work with engineering, to ensure that actually we can get this happening, we can get the ball rolling. So, and work together so that it bakes it in reality, essentially. So what we did is we gathered the team leads, so we gathered PMs, product designers, and engineering designers, and we created a bit of a plan. We worked together, essentially it was 3 workshops, so this was over quite a few weeks, but we had one workshop where we aligned on the goals and generated how might we's. And that really helped us work out, okay, so what are we aiming for? What do we want this target product experience to be? What do we want to achieve? We also did a sketching session of the future of the operations of tech. So we imagined the world of maybe we're just creating this from the beginning and we didn't have all the limitations that we had. How would we actually design it? What tools would we have for our users? And we as a design team were really, really conscious that we didn't want to start talking about tools. We actually wanted to talk about the experience of our user. So what is our user actually going to be doing? What does it mean that they can do if we were to think about this in the future? And then the third stage was to identify what those common themes were. And that led us on to creating some key principles. So the key principles were really important for the teams to use this on a day-to-day basis when they're creating new features or discussing things day-to-day. So one of the key things that we wanted to do was make sure that what we create and what we develop were interconnected. So essentially systems that talk to each other. We had a lot of users having to use multiple apps or go into different things to find the information. That information, and it sounds really basic, but that information should be there and it should be easily accessible for whatever task you're trying to do. And we also wanted our systems to be intelligent, right? So trying to understand where the user is, so what site they're in, maybe what time of day they're in, what do they need to do next on their shift. The apps and the tooling that they should use should be really intelligent and be able to tell them what's coming up next and adapt based on the context. And I think what's key about this is we hire mechanics, we hire drivers, and we're getting them to do extra things rather than really focus on what their role is and why we hired them. We hired them to be a mechanic, or we've hired them to be a driver or a customer service specialist. And essentially we're getting them to do data stuff when they could be focusing on their role. And then the last piece was we wanted a frictionless experience, so systems that they can trust and that support the users. So a lot of our driver base are essentially white male and over 40. And no offense to those people, some of them do have issues with the eyesight or accessibility issues, but also they are out in the field, right? So there's different kind of working conditions, lighting conditions. So we need to make sure that the tooling that we create works in all conditions. So that means you need to be able to have bigger text, chunky buttons, the workflows need to be straightforward. People don't need to, you want to make sure that people are not overthinking about things. And that's why we really wanted to ensure that the experience was frictionless. And all of these workshops and these principles enabled us to create a future vision and a series of stories of what the experience that users could have in the future. So I'm not going to go into all of them. I'm just going to go into one example. So smart workflows. So I did mention it earlier, but essentially our tool should support our users by surfacing what they need to do next, meaning that their expertise is utilized in the right area. So for example, if you're a mechanic, you want to be able to work on the car and fix the car. You don't essentially want to have to remember to put in this data point or this thing. You want to just be able to get onto, say you've started the job, do the job, and then be able to finish it and get onto the next job. And we had a set of these stories, and we got to the stage where it was like, yeah, this is really great, but this is so far in the future. How are we going to deliver this? How do we get to this? So essentially we worked backwards, and we put our users into three main buckets. So the first bucket was essentially viewers. So there are users that are typically in an office. They are planning and monitoring, so they're not out in the field. And then we've got users in that act bucket. So those users are mainly executing the workflows. So they're out in the field mainly. They'll have a tablet, but they'll just have a task that they need to do or a job that they need to do. They execute it, and then they move on to the next thing. And then in the last bucket, you've got analyzers. So these are typically the managers of the viewers and the people that are in the acting bucket. And they're reporting on this data. So they need the reports of the data. The data needs to make sure that it's clean and that it's reliable. The blue boxes are essentially the different capabilities that we have within operations. So it's not entirely important, but that's essentially the complexity. Those are the workflows that we need to capture, and we need to make sure that we support the users in. And then on that kind of, is that the left or the right? What we wanted to do was create a single view that is focused on the different types of users, and were created for those different types of users as well. So the user would only see tasks that are for them. They wouldn't see anything else. It would know the context that they're in. It would know what they need to do next. It would know how long their shift is, for example. And these translated into some wireframes. So we've got in the center, essentially that's the hub. So that's for the reporting type users that I mentioned. So they would see almost like everything that's happening. And then if you're more of a office-based user, you would have a dashboard or something else that you can monitor. And the tablet and devices showcase, if you were in the field, what that would look like. So essentially it's really task-based. It's telling you what your next task is, and then what you need to do for that task. The result of that was that the target product experience actually became part of the product strategy for operations. And it's in roadmaps. We are trying to deliver it at the moment. So that's kind of a big project. It did take us a long time. And you might be like, yes, Vanessa, that's really great. But actually, how does it work day to day if you're in a team? So I'm going to give you an example of how we actually use TPE and those concepts within a team setting. So the vehicle preparation system is essentially a system that processes jobs that need to be carried out on a vehicle. So Cazoo will buy a vehicle, it will come to one of our sites, we will make an assessment of how much work it needs to be done. Those jobs then go to the vehicle preparation system, and then it gets divvied out essentially to the different types of users, right? So the problems that we had at the moment, so we already had a VP system, but we had slightly different systems across multiple sites, which equaled different types of processes. We had gaps in the data completeness and the quality of it. And the user interfaces were really complex. A lot of, like 45% of our support requests were actually related to usability and reliability of the tooling. So you could tell there that there's a big problem with the tooling, right? So the first step was we went out into the field, we did some ethnographic research. So in the middle, you can see the KazooNet, which was the tooling that they were using. So imagine you're in a tent, you're a mechanic, you're given this tablet, and there's this super long form, and you have to manually enter things in the super long form. Not only that, the form is not in the order of what you would do the job in. So an example is if they're working a car, they'll probably work from the front all the way around, like clockwise. The order of the fields were in like a weird kind of order, so it didn't go in the order of the way you would do it. That equals someone spending more time on the car, on a vehicle. It also equals confusion. It's just not as efficient as it probably could be. So we identified some of these issues. And then what we did is we did some design sprints with stakeholders. So it was really key for us to understand from a stakeholder perspective actually what their needs are. So they're the people that are reporting on this. So they need to make sure that they trust the data. But we also wanted to capture is what did they want to report on? What was the key information that we needed to capture? What are those processes as well? So we worked with some of the process specialists to understand what those processes look like and how tech can help. And the outcome of this was we created a more focused view. So this video is showing how we've developed the view to be a lot more focused on one single task. We also minimized the manual input of data, so the user doesn't have to input loads and loads of manual data, so reducing the risk of errors. Users also had personal accounts, so previously they had a shared PIN, so we couldn't see what user was doing what, who was doing what, who was clocking off the job, who wasn't clocking off the job. So we created like a start-stop function to allow our users to be able to allow the managers of the users to be able to understand, okay, so who's doing what, how long are they taking, so they can track those users and maybe escalate anything that looks erroneous. And the other thing that I'm quite proud of with this project is we got buy-in from stakeholders. So we really took stakeholders along that journey. They were part of that journey. We were on site. We got the engineers coming when we were doing the research. We had PMs involved. When we were doing the design sprints, everyone was really involved. And we're continuing to do that as well today. So we have a lot of sessions with them, with all the stakeholders, and they feel part of the team, to the point where we've got stakeholders coming to the stand-ups. And they're really, really bought into VP and what we're doing. And for them, this system is really a key part in their strategy. So it's in their OKRs, for example. And it's a key part to them and their teams being successful. So in summary, these are the key takeaways that I kind of want you to be able to take away, is to minimize complexity through design. A lot of the times as designers, we are encouraged to slice things down, or your design might be too complex because the engineers don't want to develop it. And what we do is we end up putting in things in the design, right, to make sure that it works. But see how we can use design to really minimize that complexity. And then think about the user context. So what is your user doing? Where are they? Are they out and about? Do they need to pick up where they left off? Maybe they're using your app out and about on public transport, but then at home they're on a tablet. Really think about that user context and think about how that adapts as the context changes. And then lastly, bring others along the journey. So ensure that you're bringing people along the journey, engineers, stakeholders, and this is really, really key, so they understand the why behind what you're doing, especially as designers, because a lot of the time people don't understand the double diamond or the design process, or even I get people saying to me, why do you test with 5 users? Like, it's that basic, right? So a lot of the time we have to explain why we're doing what we're doing and why it's important. And the key thing of that is to bring them with you, to take them to the user testing, get them to write the notes, take them to the workshops, so they can really understand your process and why you've come to the conclusion that you've come to. And that's it for today, so thank you very much. If anyone wants to add me to LinkedIn, feel free.